Alex, it is wonderful to see you as always. And I am so excited that you are joining us at CAA for your second consecutive year of leading high holiday services for us.
Alexander, it is wonderful to see you too. And as I mentioned last year, and to you multiple times in the very near past, yeah, I'm so excited to be coming back. It really was such a special experience for me last year in so many different ways. And I really do feel honored to be able to get up in front of the Kahal, both present and virtual, uh, and be the Chazan this year.
And I just want to throw in, thank you for that, Alex. I just want to throw in a quick note on that elephant in the room, since Alex went out of his way to call me Alexander. The two of us go back almost 20 years at this point of friendship, or perhaps 20 years
Just about.
since our freshman year of high school. And you are my only other certainly close friend named Alex, which was always a little bit, contentious, because when we're hanging out together, someone says Alex, we both do that. My full name is Alexander. Alex's full name is Alex, which he has always kind of held over my head a little bit. But also, if you hear me call him Ides, his last name is Eidman. So Ides was always the best way for me to be able to distinguish our two names.
This is
And
true.
yeah, and so thinking about the 20 years we've been friends, Ides, would you ever have imagined us leading high holiday services together way back in the day?
You know, I guess, I mean, the immediate answer is no. But if I want to dig a little bit deeper, you were the gabbai for our once we had our own minyanim, and when we were in the upper grades. And I would often read the Torah or lead services on Rosh Chodesh, because I really liked the Rosh Chodesh melody. And you were often the first one to offer it to me and to push me. So I feel like, even though I certainly would not have envisioned this, we did have a lay leader cantor relationship going back all those years. And I really do remember that. And you took that job seriously. And I think people recognize that, just as I, really was always excited. I don't know the word excited because I was a 17-year-old, but
No, you were. I mean, because I remember that too. Even, you wouldn't expect with a bunch of yeshiva day school students, you'd expect a lot of like enthusiasm and gusto for leading services. And for a lot of our peers, that was not there. But I always knew that, like, if it was a special occasion or even just a normal day when no one else was like volunteering to get up in front of the room, I knew I could always like turn to you and maybe give a little bit of an elbow, but I knew you'd be willing to do it and generally excited to do it too. Is that more or less in line with your memories?
yes, I do. And I would also say, at the risk of slightly embarrassing you, that in that age when I think so many kids are at their height of cynicism and kind of questioning lots of things, in this particular arena, you were very earnest and just very, you kind of really wore your heart on your sleeve. And it was very encouraging for someone like me, I think, who could, not to say you weren't cynical about other things, but who could be cynical and who was kind of questioning my relationship with Judaism, that this was an arena where I could feel like I could just do the thing that I really enjoyed doing. And I didn't think about, who was, um, critiquing me, or was it uncool for me to be like leading services. I just kind of like saw you up there. And yeah, just there was a level of comfort, I think, that you implicitly brought by being up there. Or yeah.
Thanks, Alex. Well, you're making me blush a little bit in front of the whole internet. I mean, it also fits in with some of your other interests, both then and I assume now. I mean, last year you spoke a little bit about how your grandfather's interest in cantorial work, cantorial melodies. You were a big percussionist back in high school, so it doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, at least, it doesn't really come out of left field for you.
No, this is true. This is true. I was, yeah, and we had a Karlbach mignon that was operating kind of once a month by different people over the years, which I certainly took part in, and um, and just going and spending time with my grandfather. It was an impossible subject to get around. I would go to shul with him, and he would usually be leading shacharit services for the Chabad shul. Even though he was not Chabad, he helped found it in his neighborhood in Queens where he lived, but was always talking to me about the history of cantorial music and the cantors who he viewed in the highest regard. So it was kind of always circulating in me, even if I maybe wasn't actively thinking on it. And then just in terms of music and the idea of kind of incorporating music into prayer, that those were just two things that I found kind of inextricable. I found prayer to be, a lot of the times when I was in synagogue growing up, just to be just impossibly dry and just with no movement and no feeling. So those moments that I could kind of get up and inject like some musicality into our prayers, which were maybe normally less so, I think I did, relish those opportunities.
And that, Alex, is a great transition into my next question for you, which is kind of reflecting a little bit on our joint experience leading prayers, and specifically our joint experience last year leading CAA for the high holidays. With the benefit of a full year of hindsight, what are your thoughts and reflections, highlights, lowlights, anything else that has kind of revealed itself to you a year later?
How much time do we have? No, again, I probably said some of these things last year and or to you, but I had never led high holiday services before, and I really did feel so supported by the congregation that was there, and really empowered. It really was one of those feelings where I got up and I felt, even before I got up there, just from the conversations I had, and then certainly after day one of Rosh Hashanah and day two leading up to Yom Kippur, just such a sense of gratitude from the congregation that they were just so happy and excited to have someone helping them, lead them in prayer, that it really did bolster my confidence. I was really nervous coming in. And it's one of those things, like, you get really nervous and then you kind of remember that you've practiced and you know what you're doing here. But I think even that I fed on the crowd, as they say in sports. And so, that was, I think, a highlight for me was just being able to just do it. And obviously being able to do it with you, one of my oldest friends, and just to really feel, that that we were very much on the same page, and just there was an actual connection there, as opposed to someone who comes in to a congregation that they don't really know. They're hired there. I think that is, you can still really feel like a spiritual connection, but this, I think, felt different. And also just due to the nature of the congregation that you guys have built at CAA, which I think is very special and unique. People really, they are coming to services with very much with open hearts and open minds. They're certainly not afraid to say what they think, but I think it is really coming from a place of love and from a place of wanting their community to practice Hachnasat Orchim, the idea of welcoming in guests, that Abraham kind of began in our religious tradition. And I really did feel all of that. I mean, that is like a big highlight for me. Honestly, another highlight, um, I loved hearing the various members of the congregation be involved. Whether it was Jerry doing the Unatana Tokef, um, or Ron doing Kol Nidre, or the various people who read beautiful poems and did other singing. Again, like it really felt cohesive. It felt like I was helping to lead prayers, but also a participating member with so many other people who really wanted to um, to get involved in the service of creating a more spiritually uplifting service. I think I've hit my quota on the word service.
Beautiful.
Um, yeah. So, low light, I honestly don't know. Again, this isn't a low light. I was nervous before Rosh Hashanah before Yom Kippur, I should say, that I would be able to do all the prayers and kind of keep the energy that I felt I wanted to keep. But I really did, I don't know if my voice stayed the way it sounded to me, but I really it went, I had a surprising amount of energy even in the waning minutes.
I was blown away, man. I don't remember your voice flagging really at any moment throughout the whole process, which was so impressive. And impressive in your answer just now, Yasher Koach, on working in an impromptu little Dvar Torah. If you want to take over the whole show, come Rosh Hashanah or Yom
No,
Kippur,
absolutely
just
not.
let
That
me
was my
know.
one contribution, and now I'm stepping away.
But I just wanna also share in that, like, last year was my first time leading services as well, and really what you're talking about, both in terms of the support from the community and me being lucky enough to do that for the first time while already knowing the community, but also being able to do it pretty much exactly as you said with you, one of my oldest friends. Like, that gave me a level of confidence and reassurance that that I don't know how else I would have been able to replicate that. And I certainly wouldn't have been able to replicate that if I were trying to do everything from the Bima without you. But it was all so much more magnified because it was specifically, the two Alexes working together. And I would say that, yeah, it definitely was it exceeded my expectations for sure.
Yeah, and I think that this may be a stereotype, but I think just the mere fact that it was both of our first times doing things, there really isn't a way to, and this is the way in many things in life when you're doing them for the first time. Again, you're nervous, you're not sure, but there is this kind of palpable excitement of trying something that you haven't done yet. And I think that and kind of, especially you trying something and someone else who you're doing something with trying something else, and you're kind of holding each other up, you're supporting each other, but there is this kind of unquantifiable like sense of kind of intrigue and excitement that comes from kind of the first time, which I think was present there as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so, of course, Alex, this year is not going to be our first time doing this together, but this year leading up to the high holidays of 5781 of 2020, obviously it's going to be pretty different. Mostly, due to the coronavirus and the fact that we're going to have to be kind of leading and presenting in a much different way. So what do you think are some of our challenges and opportunities, looking ahead to this year?
So, I mean, the challenge is certainly the idea that there are going to be some people who are going to be present there, a few, and then the vast majority of people who will not be present, who we won't be able to make eye contact with, who we won't be able to feel either singing in the building that we are in, or even just their presence, their silent presence there. And that really can't be overstated. I mean, it's just, and it's a huge difference. So I think the challenge is to be able to craft a service that feels authentic, that feels like it's speaking to people even when they can't be present. Um, Now, I do think that there are opportunities for that presents as well. Whether you're talking about, um, posing questions for, small groups of people to think about and talk about together, something that, just doesn't happen when just the rabbi or the congregational leader is giving a speech. Obviously, people can have a rap session and talk about it afterwards, but the idea that you can maybe be thinking about ideas, and maybe even, whether it's in the chat or something, actually interacting with the service in a way in real time. I think those things can actually be really positive, and people can be grappling with the service as the service is going on. Um, so I think that those things can certainly be, potential exciting opportunities. But yeah, and I know that people have had experience being on Zoom and doing services for the last few months. But the high holidays carries a certain weight, and especially for people who this is their time that they are in synagogue, at least until Shemona Esrei ends, and then they quietly file out.
That doesn't happen with us.
Yeah, sorry. I must have been thinking about the last place I was at. But yeah, but I know that it is a different level of meaning for people, but I do hope that whether it's even joining in song together with people on mute, and you or I singing, or this ideas of kind of technological interaction. I do hope that people can think about it and maybe even bring ideas to how to make this very different service, one that still has lots of emotional resonance and meaning to them. But I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, and certainly what you just said about like singing along, even if you are muted, I'm hoping that people will really buy into that. It's almost like singing in the shower, right? You don't need to worry about if you're off key. You don't need to worry if you don't have the words exactly right. Like you're doing
Totally.
it along with us, but also on your own. And so I hope people feel a little bit empowered by that. I also think that it's worth bringing up the fact that like different can be good. Different doesn't just have to be bad. And what we've devised along with the support of the ritual committee and the board, of course, is that like trying some things that I probably would never have the courage to try, even though, I think we've been asking some of these questions for years to highlight probably what will be the biggest liturgical difference is we're going to be splitting the Rosh Hashanah service up over 2 days. So instead of doing essentially the same service twice on consecutive days, we're going to be doing the first half on the first day and the second half on the second day. And I'm not saying that's the way we're going to do it for years to come, but I know that every year, I either hear the question or I'm asking the question, why are we doing this whole thing twice? And so, this year we can play with that question in a totally different way. And really just I do think that's emblematic of an approach of being able to try some things differently. And that doesn't mean we're throwing out what's familiar or what's comforting. And it doesn't mean that we won't, return to some of the more traditional ways when we're able to return to a more traditional setting. But I think that diversity of experience can be, really valuable and memorable for sure. So I'm looking forward to some of those aspects of difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're talking about Rosh Hashanah, I think it's in the Gemara that they call Rosh Hashanah Yoma Arichta. They view the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah as really like one long day. So if you think about it, the idea of actually just having the service split up over 2 days is really more like what the rabbis intended if we're taking them at their word.
Well, I can't fact check you on that, but I love the thought. So I'm just gonna smile and nod at that one.
That's fair.
Wonderful. And before we wrap this up, Ides, is there anything else you want to reflect on or share with the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just echo what you just said. To really try wherever you are going to be this year to bring an open mind to these services. To remember that we are kind of out there on a limb with you, trying things, figuring things out. But again, in service of bringing something that is spiritually uplifting and thoughtful and challenging and all of those things. And yeah, and you know, I think I certainly welcome feedback for either from what people remember from last year, that maybe they have some ideas for this year or some thoughts, and also just bringing ideas for this year. I'm obviously not in charge of what gets included and what doesn't, but just that spirit of openness, I would say. And I think that I really did feel, I say that not to say that I'm assuming that's not going to be brought, because that is absolutely how I did feel people were last year. They were very, very open, and just very kind of ready to, because, you know, like it or not, I being there was in some ways new. They may have had someone leading, but that person may have been doing other things as well as leading in the past. So it kind of felt of a different piece. So yeah, I would just encourage people to stay open and try to think about little ways that you can make this year your own.
I would wholeheartly second that. Since you mentioned the word spiritually uplifting, I'm going to invite you to close us out with using your beautiful voice and really putting us in that mindset of the high holidays. I believe you've prepared. So Psalm 27 is something we say from the beginning of Elul, all the way through the high holiday season until the end of Sukkot. And it really focuses on us as individuals being able to connect with God, being able to connect with the divine. And there's a beautiful, just 3-line excerpt that has a beautiful tune for it that I gave a go this past Shabbat morning, and I will continue to try to do. But you know, we're also going to be incorporating it into our high holiday services, and I'd love it, Alex, if you would close out this conversation with a song.
Absolutely. And I should say this was written by King David, and the words in English are: "One thing I ask of Adonai, this I seek, to dwell in the house of God all the days of my life, to behold God's beauty and visit in God's sanctuary."
And God's sanctuary, of course, this year being wherever we find ourselves, right?
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, I do think that if you wanted to just kind of, you know, distill down, it's kind of like, you know, David saying, you know, this is really it for me. If I, you know, through all of the, you know, the battles and the, you know, various turmoils that have happened in my life, like this is what I am striving for, which I think I like little beautiful kind of distillations, you know, amongst all the words and all the noise. I like when, like, you know, you just kind of clear the path a little bit. So, okay.
אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אותה אבקש. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אותה אבקש. שבתי בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי, לחסות בנועם בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו. לחסות בנועם בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו.
Beautiful, Alex. Thank you. That was certainly put me in the spirit, and makes me feel like I did an okay job yesterday. But in case I was wondering, whether we need you in September, we most certainly do. That was beautiful. Thank you, and thank you for taking some time out of your day to come talk with me and hopefully with the entire community.
Of course, it really was my pleasure, Alex, and I very much look forward to seeing you and a lot of other familiar faces very soon.